Okay, so now we are at the top of the drapery, and if you just take a little tour down this drapery panel, we're at the end. I've had to double it up a little bit because it's a huge, well, it's a long panel. And so what I wanted to be able to do was show you where we're getting ready to finalize this panel. And when I say finalize, I'm saying we're gonna finish by installing the rod pocket at the top, and we're going to come down to the bottom, and we're actually going to put in the hem at the bottom of the drape. And these are the drapery weights that we're going to be using. And as you can see here, this is a 4-piece, which you would need for your pair of draperies, because you would be sewing a drapery weight on both sides, on the right side and the left side of each panel, for a total of 4. What I wanted to be able to demo here, since I had this pack already open, is the process for installing and sewing these. And the unique thing about them is that they have a nice little edge here so that you can sew them in. We're going back up to the top, but what I wanted to show you when we get to the bottom is we're going to fold back 1 inch, and then we're going to pin in the drapery weight, which looks like this. And I'm going inside here just a little bit, and it has a little piece of fabric at the bottom, which is good. So that way we can use that and pin it down, and then from there we'll sew completely across the bottom over to the other side, and then we'll come back and start to do our hem, our 4-inch hem at the bottom of the drapery. All right, so I'm just going to put that back in place, and then I will show you the hemming process. So once we've sewn across the bottom, we're then going to take our drapery and we're going to fold it backwards and change the foot on our sewing machine in order to put in a hem stitch. We're going to straighten this out across the entire length of the drapery panel, of course. And we just only need a little bit here. We'll pin this down, and I'll show you how to do that exactly. So we're not there yet. We're going back up to the top of this panel, and we're going to go ahead and get started with installing and sewing down the rod pocket. I have gone through and I've done a little bit of ironing just to lay everything down. I've done some pre-measurements, and we're going to share that with you right now. So because we're working with a 1-inch diameter rod, and you know it's a 1-inch rod from the packaging that you get at the store, but also you can see that here by looking at this measurement here. It's 1 inch across. In order to install this though, you're going to have a 1/2 inch sewing allowance, so that's included in the number. And what we're going to do is we're going to double the amount of space that we need, because we need to accommodate shearing. When the drapery is completed and you start to bunch it up into the window, you will actually need to have space to accommodate the insertion of the drapery rod. And that way, when you bunch it up to gather it, when you're pulling it on either side of your window, you'll have enough room for the material to gather at the top, okay? So the numbers that we're gonna go with for this example is, we're going to make this measurement 3 inches plus a 1/2 inch for your sewing allowance. Let me repeat that. In total, we're gonna have a 3-inch measurement for the opening of the rod, plus a 1/2 inch for a total of 3.5 inches, okay? And again, that is because we want our rod to be able to fit into the rod pocket, plus we want it to have shearing room so that we can pull it back in order to let in light, be able to close it. We want it to be somewhat manual, and we don't want them to be totally stationary where they don't move. And so having this extra space will give your rod flexibility, and it will give your panel flexibility in being able to move back and forth. In the next segment, I'm going to have the sewing machine set up, and we're going to go across this entire panel in order to create the rod pocket. Now that I have the drapery panel in place, we have it situated to where we're going to install the stitch across the entire drapery panel. And because I'm using my machine now, there's a couple of things that I want to make sure that I have worked out. And I just want to make sure that I have the correct stitch identified, which I do, which is stitch 1. So we're good to go on that. We're at the part where we're sewing down our 1/2 inch sewing allowance, which is going to create our rod pocket that we're going to install on our drapery rod. So we have sewn down the rod pocket, and it could be straighter, but again, because I'm filming and guiding and teaching, it was just one of those things where you're just gonna have somewhat of a crooked line, but it's okay. Again, no one is going to get up on a ladder and check your stitch. So for those of you who are even the most poised in your sewing, you're gonna have a couple of little glitches here and there. Don't worry about it. Nobody's really gonna see it. So now I'm inserting the rod, as you can see here, and it's going in quite easily. There's enough room in there, right? So your rod pocket can go in very easily. It's not stiff. It has a lot of flexibility. And so when I pull it out, because I'm only putting in a little bit of the rod in order to show you what will happen next when it's installed on your actual rod in your space, it is going to shear. And when I say shear, you'll be able to pull it in, and that way you'll be able to open it and use it when it's fully installed. And see how much of it that you can condense? Now it's come off the end here. But I'm just using this as an example to show you how eventually that will gather once it's fully installed. And you'll see that in the next video. All right, so we have the rod pocket in. There's enough room for it to shear and gather. And there's a lot of little tricks that you'll be able to use in order to keep it to stay in one area. There's so many different things that you can use. You can use double-sided tape, carpet tape, Velcro, a couple of other things. If you want it to be stationary, meaning open, and maybe you want to be able to close it, I would go with a little Velcro tab. Again, I will show you some of the techniques that you can use in order to achieve those different looks once we install the actual drapery panels. So, as you can see, we have sewn in the rod pocket at the top, and we are now going to just fold this over a little bit because I want to make some room on my table. If you're working in a confined space, you're not able to have a lot of space. I'm just going to make sure that for our next segment that you can see what we're working on. And I've talked about space constraints. I've talked about some of the little tricks that I use. And I will definitely be putting together a video in order to show you how to maximize your space with a couple of utility tables that you can pick up at Home Depot's or your favorite big box store in order to create your sewing space, and then put down a surface. I think it's MDF, but it could be called something else. I'll make sure I look it up and have the exact title of the material in the instructions when you get ready to do your draperies, which will be available on the workshop link on the DMV Interiors website. You're gonna have to fold it a little bit and make sure that you accommodate your drapery. your panels. After a while, you get used to it. You do a couple of rooms, you're good to go. And so what we have here at the bottom is the next phase. You're like, why is there needle and thread here? Well, depending on the type of sewing machine that you have, you may be able to remove the general foot that you use throughout the entire process of creating these draperies in order to replace it with a foot that allows you to put in a invisible hem. And it looks like this. Let me put it in the light so that you can see it. And it has a little adjustable little screw here at the end that allows you to fine tune how you're going to actually place it at the bottom of the stitch when you're ready to do that portion. And as I said, I would share with you how you do that